to Dead Alive.
Oh my!
So,
I have never seen this movie.
Speaking of media that lasts that
Stands the test of
stands the test of time.
Okay.
Let me tell you guys about Dead Alive. So we watched this last night, right after What We Do in the Shadows, which was a great bookend.
It was actually a nice pairing.
Released in 1992, directed by the famous Peter Jackson. Written by him, Steven Sinclair, and Fran Walsh's wife.
Yep.
It was I don't know how to describe it. I would describe it as a love letter to Evil Dead. That's how I would describe it.
I also would say
in the
that
horror
it's
genre.
probably someone getting into filmmaking. And it was his second film, you said, Dave?
It was his third
including the short
feature-length film.
Okay.
His third feature-length film. His first film was a short done way before.
Like when he was in school and whatnot.
But it was his third feature-length film.
Yeah. And so it's very early Peter Jackson,
Very
who has
early
a
Peter
cameo
Jackson.
as the mortuary assistant. And I did not even recognize him until Jake said, oh my gosh, Peter Jackson is in this. Because he's famous for doing cameos in his movies.
I think it was David, actually. David said, is
Was it
that
you?
Peter Jackson?
Yeah.
I just happened to be looking at the Wikipedia article.
Nice.
Looking through the cast, because Angela had said that
He's gotta be in here.
he always does cameos in his
He
films.
does.
So I was looking at the casting to see what character he played a cameo as,
Nice.
and it just so happened to be I was looking at it like right after the scene that he was in got finished. So I was like, hey, rewind it.
So we rewound it. And was Peter Jackson.
It was Peter Jackson.
Beardless Peter Jackson.
Beardless
he was
Peter
a baby.
Jackson. Very
was.
much so.
Well, and I think you said it was kind of a love letter to the Evil Dead, kind of because the horror tropes, the gore. I also felt that it was one of those movies that was a commentary on all those B movies that would come out in the 50s.
Kind of an homage
That most
to it,
of us
too.
watched on TV, or in our household, we watched Mystery Science Theater, make fun of them. And these movies had a second life because these Minnesotans are like throwing
These
stuff
Midwesterners.
Like, they're like, and they said, we lied to the studio. We told them we can't move to New York. We can't move to LA. We have puppets, and we can't have ceilings that are a certain size because the puppets, and they believed them.
Oh
and,
my
and
God.
so basically they were in Minnesota, and they said once a year this team of like black SUVs would come out. They'd get out, they'd look around. Okay, it looks good. Then they get back in the SUVs and fly back. And they said having Midwestern humor made it a very different show, but it gave these horrible, unwatchable movies a second life. And it's funny, every time I try
and
to
made
watch,
them watchable sometimes.
every time I try to watch one of the B movies they've made fun of, like even famous one like This Island Earth that was
or
in
Manos
E.T.
Hands of Fate.
Manos Hands of
my
Fate.
God.
All I can hear are their voices in the background.
And Manos Hands of Fate, I could be wrong. I think it has a Criterion Collection.
It does now because so many people they said it was the best thing Mystery Science Theater did.
Yeah.
And people say, wow, you did that right off the cuff. You were just watching this movie. And they said, we used to send one person in there, and it was TV's Frank.
TV's Frank.
And he'd be like, I just saw the gum on the shoe of humanity. And I can't watch it again. And then they'd have to watch it like 8 times to put the dialogue in.
Oh my God.
And sync it. And, but it made those movies watchable. And even to this day, if I hear those voices, it calms me down. I would listen to Mystery Science Theater while I wrote my dissertation.
Which is crazy.
It was crazy. People have written concerts.
But awesome.
To the background of them doing, and it's nice to see them in riff tracks and thriving. But it is one of those things that I feel like having your niche, and I think New Zealand does have that, changes what comes out of it.
Yeah.
It's not as influenced by Hollywood. They're like, no, we may be greenlit for this, but we're doing it this way. And when you look at some of the stuff that's come out, it was well done. I don't know if I would put this movie in that category. However, I do remember, so this is an early Peter Jackson movie. And it's like very interesting to me because I do feel like it's kind of a love letter to all the really bad movies that came out of the 50s as well. That's kind of what I got out of it. But Jake, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah. Well, I want to
kind of
ask David to see what his general thoughts are on Dead Alive, and then we'll hop into the plot summary. So,
which Jake did.
So what are your thoughts after watching it? This has been about 24 hours since we finished it.
Yeah, this movie was a shock to me.
Yes.
And I knew it was campy because I had been turned on to this movie. I hadn't actually watched it until now, but I had been turned on to this movie by a coworker who showed me a YouTube clip of a particular scene.
Yes.
And I thought it was the funniest thing in existence because of how campy and just cringy it was. And even with that in mind, and knowing that it was a, over-the-top, gory, ridiculous horror movie in the vein of Evil Dead, knowing that, I was still shocked by how over-the-top and how campy it was.
It was, where that phrase, we've used it a couple times today, over-the-top, comes from?
Where?
It comes from World War I, when they would make the soldiers go into the battlefield, even though they were going to get mowed down when they first went over. And the commanders in the British forces would take a gun out and say, anybody that doesn't go over, I'm going to shoot you. So the concept of over the top is it exceeds what's necessary, and it's a waste that no one needs to do. And I would definitely say this movie does fit into that category. It is over the top and it exceeds what's necessary. But I also think the attention to detail was fascinating because somebody had to set up these shots.
In fact, yeah, it's funny you bring that up because Richard Taylor, who worked with Jackson on multiple projects, including the Lord of the Rings films, and does all the armor for the orcs, all the practical stuff, the models, everything, and he mostly does makeup and costumes in the Lord of the Rings. But he was part of this, and you can tell like the early makeup is kind of not really similar to the orcs at all, but you can tell that this guy is really good at what he does, and it's gross and horrible, and it delivers exactly what it needs to, and it's actually far better quality than, say, the first Evil Dead, for example.
Yes, yeah, I would say
it's not like
about a decade between them.
Yeah, it's funny.
But it's distinctly New Zealand.
It's a low budget B movie, but it's not poorly done.
No.
It's done very well, and like the parts where it's awful and terrible and you can tell how fake it is, like you can also tell that it's done that way on purpose.
Yeah, well, and I feel like I will just have a disclaimer out there. This is not a good movie or a great movie by any sense. Don't go out and just watch it.
No.
If you can make it through half of it, I commend you.
Yes.
We made it through the entire thing last night because we are committed to excellence.
Yeah.
And I will just say that. Because if you look at the summary Jake wrote, that right there has my respect. Because I went home and I was thinking, how would you even summarize?
Well, this is not a summary per the word.
It's pretty dang good what you wrote. I will just say that. I will just say, compared to what watching this and the way I felt, Jake and I had just finished a TV series that was very good on Netflix.
We will talk about next week.
And we will talk about next week. Jake and I are going to do a podcast on that. It's a horror film called House on Haunted Hill. And it was so well done.
You spoiled it.
No,
I'm joking. Yeah, whatever.
But it's working on so many levels. When Jake was done with it for the first time, and I've taught it 4 times. So this is like the 7th time I've watched it through. And Jake was like, I don't have words because there's so much that went on. I feel that way about the Dead Alive. But in a, not a
totally
good way.
Different angle.
It's not Shakespeare.
No.
It's like Roger Corman scraped some gum off his shoe, threw it at Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson rolled it in some dirt.
With a little bit of Sam Raimi and Francis Ford Coppola.
Some Sam Raimi. And
why not?
Goes, I'm gonna make a love letter to B movies from the 1950s and Evil Dead. And by goodness, he did it. I'm just going to say that.
He did.
But I was just thinking, how would I even approach this? And Jake actually did a really good
We're going to go through the film because for the listeners out there, do I recommend this film? Only if you're a fan of Evil Dead because of how gross and nasty the gore is in this film. So if you can take Evil Dead, you can definitely take this, even though this is...
And some people cannot take Evil Dead.
So
know that going in.
Know that going in.
We watched it so you didn't have to.
Yeah, we watched it so you didn't have
there
to.
You go.
I would recommend if you're a fan of camp, if you think Army of Darkness is great, you're gonna freaking love this film.
Yeah,
if you
pretty
think,
much in the same
if
vein.
you think, there were some moments when you and me watched the remake of Evil Dead from 2013, the Fede Alvarez film. Fantastic
Which is
movie,
amazing,
so good.
Yeah,
but there were some moments where I'm like,
I can't
I'm sorry,
even look at this.
I can't look away.
Yeah,
I can't watch this. I was looking at the screen the entire time during this film, and I was like, I want to look away, but I can't.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
So let's dive into Dead Alive. Welcome to Dead Alive, ladies and gents. Dead Alive opens with what all masterpieces start with, an opening shot of the sky. Yes, Dead Alive joins the same club as Working Girl, The Dark Knight, and Heat. We start off with a shot in the sky, but this time it's from the ground. We got no budget for rent a helicopter now.
That's right.
Yes, our opening shot is of the sky, but it's from some butthole crack in a rock somewhere in New Zealand. We pan down from this view in the sedimentary cesspool, and as we do, we are greeted with the words, Skull Island, southwest of Sumatra, 1957.
Oh boy.
We proceed to see two funny-looking New Zealanders running down this crack, carrying a wooden-looking cage. One of the Kiwis drops his end of the cage, and the other ridicules him and says the phrase, listen, picked up the cage, get the big dollars. We are then greeted by a bunch of natives who assumedly weren't big fans of the man's misuse of contractions. And they corner the two men and demand that the rat monkey be left in the valley where it belongs. The no get the big dollars man then pulls out a packet of paper and shoves it in the native's face and yells permit multiple times. The natives look at the paper, think about it, and then rip it up. And the no get man,
they should.
And they rip it up. The no get man then pulls out a gun and says, I'm a New Zealand zoo official, and this monkey is going to Newtown. And the guy starts blasting. The natives, who don't get shot, just run off and hide. The no-get man cuts off the ties of the cage with a machete, then lifts it onto his shoulder and runs off, leaving the other man behind. The two men run through the White Mountains, which is, by the way, where they filmed Return of the King, because it's the same exact place where Aragorn and part of the Hobbit, where Legolas, Gimli, and Aragorn go into the mountains to the dead people. It's exact same place. In fact, there is a shot. I was rewatching this. There's a shot where they're running, and it's like from the view of this ravine, and they run by, and you only see a little them for 1 second. It's the same place where he films same setup as Return of the King. So anyway, I lost my spot.
It's okay. I just along those lines, what I think is brilliant is even though this isn't a good movie by any shot, it's amazing.
Freaking entertaining.
Well, it's freaking entertaining, but I also think look at what it did. It prepared Peter Jackson to shoot in all these locations.
That is true. Yes.
And I feel like even if this is a great movie, you could see like kind of there's stuff that you do, and God, even if it's bad, He sometimes uses it
for good.
And I mean, I honestly think of Lord of the Rings as one of the best movies ever filmed. And I don't think that could have happened to someone who was inexperienced.
And if you know what, if we have Dead Alive to thank for the Lord or the Rings trilogy, then God bless it. Let me tell you. God bless you, Dead Alive. Okay. He gets to the car. The no-get man gets to the car. He hurls the cage in and himself in the Jeep, and his two cronies hop in, who, might I add, were playing baseball with rocks just moments before he jumped in the car.
I forgot about that.
So the natives are chasing the other guy. The other guy emerges out of the ravine, and they're driving away in the Jeep. The man trips while running on the rock, and trips over a rock while running, and the Jeep goes over a huge bump. And the cage falls on the man, and he gets a nasty dose of ketchup on his hand. The second man catches up with the Jeep, and the natives give up for some reason, even though they're going like 15 miles an hour. The no-get man then recalls, "A little bugger bit me." And the second man replies, "Zingaya!" The Jeep comes to a screeching halt. The second man then kicks no-get man out of the Jeep and hops off with the two other men following. The second man says, "You've got the bait." There's some deadly in the Jeep, the no-get man says. The second man turns around and looks toward the Jeep and grabs a large machete that looks like an axe. The two men hold the no-get man, and then the second man cuts off the guy's hand and then proceeds and screams in bad ADR and then cuts his arm off, and they proceed to yell Zingaya again and point to his forehead. They then yell Zingaya, and then the second man swings at no-get man, and boom, we get Dead Alive's title. Not Evil Dead.
Nice animated blood.
Yes. Very, very early 90s.
Very early.
So we proceed. So what do you guys think of the opening? Like opening the movie.
It set a tone.
Set a tone.
Like from the very beginning, it was like I was just seeing this. Okay, yeah, they're in a ravine, and then all of a sudden I see the little subtitles appear. Skull Island.
And we started laughing.
Yeah, we're like, what?
Yeah, it's just like, what is this movie? Like right from the very beginning.
What genre do I put it in?
Oh, man. We proceed from there and watch the rat monkey get from Skull Island to New Zealand with model airplanes and all. We go, there's lots of use of models and train in the trolleys and stuff, which is cool to see.
And every vintage car they could find in Wellington.
Every vintage car they could find.
And they used them all,
And they used them, too. Let's see. We go from there to a delivery vehicle in front of a old small corner store where a very tall man walks out of the small vehicle. In the store, we find Paquita, the cashier who then greets the man entering. She is quite excited by the sight of this man and then proceeds to pull her off her overcoat and show off her dress underneath. The man first pays no mind, but then Paquita goes up to him and then he compliments her and then walks away. Paquita looks longingly at the man, and as we get up and as we get closer and closer to her, we cut to a shot. We get a good look at her Bruce Campbell-esque jawline. We then get a scary shot of an old hand grabbing Paquita's arm, and it's her mom? Well, it's some old lady. Ask Paquita if she likes that man. Time for tarot cards, baby. Yeah, we then get a scene of Paquita and this lady and a Mario-looking fella, I'm guessing it's her dad, all at a table, and she's showing off to Paquita her tarot cards. After it's revealed that Paquita will be romantically entangled with a man extremely soon, the old lady also reveals that a certain gypsy symbol that Paquita will see when this man is near. Well, it just so happens there's a man in the store right now. So Paquita, looking quite annoyed, gets up, goes to the man, attends to him, stomps her foot, gets his attention, and he walks over, he gives her a list, and then he's like, oh, and before I leave, I think I'll have one of these now. And it's like a licorice or something, I think.
It's like a candy they have. This is the 1950s.
Yeah, the 50s.
So you'd have like complimentary stuff for your customers. Everything was about service, and then they delivered the groceries to you. Yeah,
and so he's handing her the list, he's going to grab it. Oh, he's mumbling idiot. He spills the pencils and the licorice, and then she grabs his hands before he starts cleaning up, revealing the symbol made out of licorice and pencils.
What a plot point.
And then she is instantly entranced by this man and follows him out of the store. He just bumbles his way out and then almost gets run over by the trolley, grabs onto the trolley, and just goes home that way. So as Lionel gets near to the house, we hear his mother calling out his name, Lionel. Lionel runs to the home and finds his mother in the kitchen wielding a knife and declares there's a beetle under the fridge. She proceeds to blame Lionel and opens a letter with the knife. She informs Lionel that she has been accepted into the WLWL, Wellington Ladies Welfare League. She then declares, oh God, and says the house, which is spotless, by the way, is a total disaster and needs to be cleaned, and gives countless chores to Lionel, and looks out at the lawn, which is freshly mowed, that he just mowed today. And she says, does that look like a well-maintained frontage?
Yes, I know. She said a front.
Frontage.
Oh, frontage. That's right.
We cut to Lionel mowing the lawn, and when the mower stops working, as he crouches down to take a look, a dog comes out of nowhere and just jumps on him, that German Shepherd. Finding out soon that as the dog's licking him, it's Paquita's dog. She's brought him some groceries. Some dialogue exchange, and he says that her dog is almost big enough to be in a zoo. And because we're lost in translation, they agree to go to the zoo on a date the next day. Yes. We cut to Lionel's mother peering out from a window and drops some flowers and crushes them with her foot. We get an incredibly awkward exchange, guys. Let me tell you, between Lionel and Paquita, just gawking at each other. And then Lionel hears a crash in the house. He runs back inside, and the awkwardness comes to a halt. Lionel finds his mother with a broken vase, and she blames everything on him. And then she laments Lionel's father, who's dead.
She would make Norman Bates' mother look like a kind matriarch. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So we got to the zoo, the lions and monkeys and slobbering cannibals galore. We get Paquita and Lionel chatting and enjoying the zoo. They come across a pond, and Lionel has a moment. This is important, guys, where he flashes back to a traumatic moment earlier in his life. He then regales Paquita with a tale of how his dad died trying to save him from in the drowning ocean. Paquita comforts him. All is soon forgotten when they see the monkey exhibit. Ooh, monkeys. Soon after, a monkey gets sucker punched by another one in a neighboring cage. Boom, it's the rat monkey. Yes, in all the stop motion glory, he THOs one of the monkeys and grabs his fruit, and then grabs the monkey and pulls the animal's arm through the cage hard enough where he pops the whole arm off the monkey and starts devouring it.
Yes.
Pandemonium ensues, and the monkey exhibit it goes crazy as the two lovebirds watch in horror. A zookeeper runs over and proclaims, "Poor little bugger." He slaps the cage of the rat monkey to get him away, and then drags the body of the other monkey out. And then and this is really graphic, but we won't go into detail. He regales the couple with the origin story of the rat monkey, Rat Vikings. As he tells this incredibly disturbing story, he drips monkey blood on Paquita. And then he goes, and so after that, she goes and sits down and is aghast. Out from the bushes, the mom grabs the bushes and she's spying on them. And then she's like, huh. And then she slips literally on a banana peel and falls back into the monkey cage. And the rat monkey grabs her arm. It's like, and just totally bites into her arm.
Yes,
and
really
she
bad.
lets out this most curdling, bloody scream I've ever heard in a movie, I would say. And then she slaps that monkey down, and then she like steps on it and kills the monkey.
She kills the rat monkey.
She kills the rat monkey. So she murders it, and the zookeeper goes up to her. He's like, it's like his prized exhibit that they just got. He's like, she's like, what are you doing? Look at my dress. Like she says her dress.
I am the victim.
I
always.
am the victim. What do you guys think of the zoo scene? Oh man.
I will say this. A lot of times in bad movies, they give us a clue to somebody's traumatic backstory and they never pay off.
Mm.
And if you give me a gun in the first or the second act, I want to see that gun used in the third act.
Yeah.
And I will be happy to say that Peter Jackson does pay that off
does
in a
pay that
very
off.
interesting way.
Very interesting.
With his trauma in the water and his dad drowning.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say also that it's like this woman who is his mother is a total narcissist.
Yes.
She's just like everything is
like,
everybody
he is
else's
only mine
fault.
and no one else's.
That's right. She has an unhealthy codependent relationship with her child.
Really
and
disturbing.
It's disturbing.
Yeah. David, what do you think of the rat monkey?
Yeah, that was
God.
that was disturbing. Just the obvious like claymation weirdness of it, and
Looked amazing.
it was
did.
like I wouldn't say amazing is not what I would.
Well, I'm thinking
It looks
Ray
okay.
Harryhouse.
It looks all right.
Looks like Ray Harryhouse.
Yeah, it does look like Harry Harris.
It's very obvious like it's very obvious when the rat monkey's in the scene and when it's not.
Yeah.
Just like the weird claymation, it totally sticks out. It's super bizarre. But it fits with just the general bizarre aesthetic of this movie.
It does.
And then the zookeeper is like telling of the origin of the rat monkey. And he's like,
It's
"Hey,
so
giant
disturbing.
rats got out of the ship and went and they
It just
and they
graphically-
assaulted the monkeys
Yes,
and then
describes.
graphically describes it. It's like, oh my God, what
It's
the
like,
heck?
first of all, how does that even
How does
happen?
that even work?
I know.
And then second of all, he says, and I think the natives use him for black magic, eh?
And why would you be telling this
Why would you be telling
to
them this?
random, patrons of the zoo?
The only thing I can think of is like him getting the blood from the monkey's arm on Paquita's shoe is foreshadowing of what's going to happen to our characters. They're going to be sucked into this violent world. I also feel like most movies, and this is my many, many years of watching Mystery Science Theater do B movies, is that the reason that something is wrong with this rat monkey is that something happened against nature. And because it went against nature, it's an abomination because God didn't create it. It's something evil.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And I have no issue with the story or the origin of
It's
it at
just
all.
the way they did
It's
it.
just weird.
It was very strange.
Yeah. Okay, so continuing on.